Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Kellen Moore, first full week on the job in New Orleans, and has a lot of work to do. Obviously, the New Orleans Saints have to clear a whole bunch of about $50 million in cap space. They got to go through evaluations, their current roster, draft, free agents, all that good stuff. But Kellen Moore's also got to fill out a coaching staff. And that's something that he began doing in earnest here on Tuesday with a trio of additions joining the staff right now. Let's run through each of these if we could. I'll give you a thumbnail on the three new additions to the New Orleans Saints coaching staff. And we'll start with what is a very familiar name to New Orleans Saints coaches, players, front office, probably some fans as well. Joel Thomas is headed back to New Orleans as the Saints running backs coach after spending this past season with the New York Giants. Now, if you're not familiar, Joel Thomas is 50 years old, spent 9 years with the New Orleans Saints from 2015 through 2023. Now, he wasn't fired, but he was allowed to pursue the job with the Giants. Effectively, Dennis Allen didn't block him from leaving. Sort of an agreeable departure a year ago. Well, after 1 year in New York without Saquon Barkley. A little bit of a different job coaching the Giants running backs when you don't have Saquon Barkley. Joel Thomas back in New Orleans with the Saints. Of course, last year, running backs coach Derek Foster, who came in for one season. He is now Cowboys running backs coach Derek Foster. So Kellen Moore had a vacancy. I think it speaks to the respect that a guy like Joel Thomas has, not only in the locker room, within the organization, around the NFL. When a coach he's never worked with, after being gone 1 year from New Orleans, brings him back to New Orleans, and how much Joel Thomas wanted to be back with the New Orleans Saints. So Kellen Moore has added Joel Thomas as the running backs coach, who will have the opportunity to coach Alvin Kamara's whole year, except for this past season, and then try to maximize Kendre Miller. Saints have a quarterbacks coach as well. It's Scott Tolzien. If you're a football fan over the last 15 years or so, that name sounds familiar. Tolzien was a quarterback at Wisconsin, you might remember, bounced around the NFL, probably most notably his time with the Indianapolis Colts, where he did start a few games, played in 10 career games with 4 starts. Tolzien's just 37 years old, but there's overlap here. So Tolzien worked with Kellen Moore in Dallas. So he was Tolzien was a coaching assistant in Dallas for 3 seasons, 2021 and 22 with Kellen Moore. And then when Moore left to go to the Chargers last year and then the Eagles this year, Tolzien was elevated to the Cowboys quarterbacks coach. So he's been there in Dallas, Tolzien has, ever since 2020. This is another assistant that knows Kellen Moore well, and vice versa. It is worth noting Dallas didn't try to keep Tolzien. His contract expired. They let it expire. They didn't re-sign him. So effectively, Tolzien was a coaching free agent. Of course, Mike McCarthy out, Brian Schottenheimer in. Schottenheimer chose not to retain Tolzien, go in a different direction with the staff. The big question for the Saints, of course, look, Kellen Moore is going to work with the quarterbacks. I mean, he played quarterback. He was a quarterback's coach. He's offensive coordinator. It's going to call plays. So this role of quarterback's coach that Scott Tolzien is going to fill is more of an assistant to Kellen Moore type role, and not so much of a standalone spot where he's going to have great autonomy or anything like that. The bigger question isn't who's your quarterback's coach. The bigger question is who's your quarterback? And that's something the Saints still got to figure out. And third staff hire that we became aware of on Tuesday is TJ Paganetti off of the Eagles staff. Now, Nick Underhill was the first to report this, and Paganetti, while his title with New Orleans as of right now is unknown, he was the run game coordinator and assistant offensive line coach for the Champs in 2024. It's notable because remember, Brooks Cabina, who was with us last week, was talking about Eagles assistants and how Nick Sirianni handled that, wanting his guys to be able to get head coaching opportunities, but didn't necessarily like guys poaching his staff.
He is very encouraging for all of his coaches to go get head coaching jobs, but once they do, you're not taking any of my guys. He locked down his staff. that's something that he carried over from working with Frank Reich. Frank Reich had the same deal. Support, go get you a job, but these are my guys. This is the success we've had.
So I asked Brooks how many he'd get. He said 2, meaning how many Kellen Moore would take. He said 2, and his guesses were Nussmeier and Kevin Patullo. So far, no word yet on Patullo. There was a report early on from Jeremy Fowler that Patullo was a name to watch, who's the assistant head coach there in Philly. No word there. Kyle Valero is another name that we've heard. That was part of Brooks Cabina's prediction, was Kyle Valero would follow Kellen Moore from Philly, had been with Moore in Dallas as well. But so far, the coaches that have interviewed from the Eagles staff are Doug Nussmeier, Jamal Singleton, Christian Parker. We mentioned Valero, Patullo as possibilities, and now they've hired TJ Paganetti. Again, undetermined yet, undefined what his role will be, and I'm curious what role he fills, because this was a guy that was, in his time as a head coach, has been a running backs coach, a tight ends coach. Here recently in Philadelphia, he was the run game coordinator and assistant offensive line coach. Well, the Saints have already hired Brendan Nugent as the offensive line coach. And remember, Nugent's another guy that has ties to New Orleans. Brendan Nugent, the new offensive line coach, had been in New Orleans from 2015 to 2021. So when Peyton left, obviously, and DA came back in, Nugent was gone. But it is worth mentioning now, the Saints have hired TJ Paganetti, one Eagles assistant. It's likely that Nussmeier becomes the offensive coordinator. Do any of the other guys we mentioned, Valero, Patullo, Parker, Singleton, do any of those guys join Kellen Moore's staff in New Orleans as well? Just something worth keeping an eye on. But as of right now, what we know, 3 assistants have joined Kellen Moore's staff as of Tuesday. 3 more assistants joining Kellen Moore's staff as of Tuesday. I know this was interesting as well. Thank you, Muse. This was when Scott Tolzien spent the last 2 years with the Dallas Cowboys as the quarterbacks coach. This was a soundbite from Tolzien at their media availability when he was with Dallas, and just a little perspective on Scott Tolzien as a coach.
From my end, it's more these good seasons are going to happen, bad seasons are going to happen. You're always, common sense, but you're trying to emphasize the good and also emphasize the bad. So that one thing I've learned as a coach is you get what you emphasize. So that's obviously starting into the this year's season. That's always on the forefront of your mind is like, what are our improvement areas? So, you make cut-ups of those things and you try to bring it to life because the tape never lies, and that always helps support what you're trying to teach and what you're trying to coach.
Smart guy, played quarterback in the NFL, has been coaching offense and quarterbacks in the NFL since 2020, and so a guy that Kellen Moore is now bringing to New Orleans. 3 more hires for the New Orleans Saints. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.